You're listening to Ecto Portal, a journey into the unknown with Anthony Anderson and VERNA Wilson.
I hope that you are seated comfortably with the light turned down and the curtains drawn.
To another journey into the unknown, the unexplored, the unexplained Ecto Portal. I'm Anthony Anderson, your host, and I'm here with my co-host,
VERNA Wilson.
And today's show is another interesting UFO case, the Dhekelia Barracks alien. It's from 1968. It's an interesting story that I actually tried to find more information than I found but I couldn't find a lot.
It's one of those cases where it's one-off, it's very detailed and interesting, but you really got to research your stuff to get into it.
Yeah, so I tried hard to find articles after article, but there's not a lot out there. But it was documented, and it did happen in 1968 in Cyprus at this barracks by a British officer, actually. But we'll get to that story soon enough. Okay, now we're going to go on to tonight's show topic, which is the 1968 alien visitation at Dhekelia in Cyprus, the country of Cyprus. Our show is concerning an alien encounter that happened in September of 1968 at Dhekelia Barracks in Cyprus. The story begins when a non-commissioned British officer was staying at the Dhekelia Barracks and was in his room fast asleep. He was awoken by the sounds of constant barking from a Turkish wolfhound guard dog that was employed by the barracks. The dog barking must have been heard by others around the barracks that night, but this officer was the only one who made any note of it. Around 3 a.m., the dog began to bark at what was surely an intruder on the premises. The man called the dog back to him, and the dog whimpered and crawled under his bunk. Now, for the next while, the dog continued to whimper and whine. Clearly, something was amiss, and the dog had picked up on it.
Some guard dog.
Yeah. The man went to the door to his barracks and could hear a loud, high-pitched whining sound outside in the corridor. Now, unsure of what he might be up against, he grabbed his nearby gun to arm himself. He slowly opened the door. He glanced out in the hall and at the stairwell that led up to his room, and he could just make out someone or something on the wooden stairs. Now he strained to see the being. It was not human that he could make out. It was bright orange in color and was hunched forwards in a stance. It had a terrifying scowl on its face and 2 eyes that did not blink. And on top of his head was a wisp of fiery red hair. It was dressed in a blue type of spacesuit that was stark in color against its orange skin tone. The suit itself had no collars or cuffs of any kind. The British soldier was terrified, and it takes quite a lot to scare an officer. When the creature reached the top of the stairs, it stopped, turned its head 180 degrees towards him, appearing as if the head was not even attached to its body. Only the head turned.
Freaky.
Very freaky. The soldier turned white as a sheet and moved back into his room. Not taking his eyes from the odd creature, he slammed the door shut. The man could hear the high-pitched hum sound get louder and louder, and that was followed by a sliding across the floor.
So the guy wasn't really walking, he was kind of sliding across. Wow.
Hard to say. And now he sat on his bunk in utter fear and panic, not sure if what was out there was going to kill him at a moment's notice. Now, he couldn't locate his gun anymore, and he panicked. He grabbed a nearby spear gun and aimed and fired through the door into the hallway. The noise stopped.
So, wow.
The man sat in his room, terrified, for the next few hours until a relief guard found him. Before long, his tale of his encounter reached his superior officer, who ordered a full medical and psychological profile to be done on him. Now, the result was that he had some muscular paralysis, but other than that, he was perfectly healthy. The dog survived the experience as well, and from that day moving forward, reacted to each and every small sound that was made around it.
He was traumatized, spooked.
They both were.
They both were, because paralysis, that's shock. That's almost like shell shock.
And
Yeah.
Well, you get PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, from this. I could imagine that particular experience now. You hear the sound, you don't think UFO because you didn't see the UFO land.
Right, you didn't see it land.
See anything
You
in
just
the sky.
saw somebody sliding
You're
across.
woken up because the dog's barking.
Yeah.
Something's clearly in the hallway. You're thinking it's someone breaking in.
Right.
If it's your barracks. So you get up, you open the door.
You see somebody with an orange
and
face.
you see that, and the head turns and looks at you.
And it's sliding. He's sliding across the floor.
That would freak me out.
And I don't mean to be funny, but the way you're describing him, I was going to say if he was walking across Market Street, he probably wouldn't have gotten noticed.
No, he wouldn't have.
Yeah.
But in this case,
1968, in a barracks, of course.
Yeah, I mean.
And a guard dog would you normally go "Rrr," but instead he whimpers and goes underneath the bunk. That's unusual.
That tells you even the animal picked up on the strangeness of it.
And the breed of the animal, you talk about wolfhounds. Wolfhounds are meant to be hunting dogs. Wolfhounds don't get spooked that much.
Does it look like a wolfhound?
No, the dog. They said Turkish. The dog was a
But
Turkish
what
wolf.
does the dog look like, though? Do you know?
A Turkish wolfhound?
Yeah.
Well, I know an Irish wolfhound.
Do you want to look one up on your phone?
Yeah, I'll look.
She's going to look one up because I'm curious to see what they look like. You may want to look it up too, folks.
I think they're similar to Irish wolfhounds, which are big-ass, shaggy dogs.
Yeah.
You've seen Irish
Well, I
wolfhounds.
imagine if you're talking a guard dog for a barracks, it's probably going to be a pretty good-sized dog, right?
And if it's a Turkish wolfhound, and if it's anything like the Irish wolfhound, those dogs are not easily spooked, and they're used to being sensitive to sound and to stuff like that because they're used as hunting dogs.
But I would imagine you wouldn't be so knee-jerk to every sound unless you had an experience. Like this dog has PTSD as well.
They're big, just like Irish wolfhounds. Yeah.
It's like an oversized wolf kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And they're used for hunting. And so these kind of dogs are not easily spooked.
Man,
and they're used for shepherd dogs too.
That creature must have really freaked the dog out as well.
Yeah, he really did.
Now there's another. What's weird though, I've never heard any alien described with fiery red wisp of hair,
and an orange face, and orange skin.
I've never
heard a species that looked like, or somebody described that way.
Not a gray, not a reptilian.
No, or even the tall blonde. Like the tall blonde, typical tall blonde.
Or really pale. Even.
Pale, or sometimes they have tans and blonde hair and kind of almond, but not red hair and orange skin.
Scowl.
I've even heard of a blue tinge. Someone with a blue tinge.
I've heard of that before too.
And that reminds me of the Indian Hindu god with the blue tinge.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
You see that on Ancient Aliens all the time. They'll talk about the skin.
Krishna with the blue tinge, and it makes you wonder: was it really was it an extraterrestrial? They thought it was a god. Yeah,
that's true.
That makes you wonder.
I think that has a lot. But same things with the Egyptians. That who's to say what they saw that they thought was a god, which wasn't something else as well.
Yeah.
What's interesting with this case, though, besides this particular barracks in Cyprus in 1968, there was another experience 3 years later in Cyprus.
Oh.
In 1971, there was a UFO sighting over Cyprus. In 1993, a man named Steve, not his real name, he did not wish to be publicly acknowledged on the subject, had a UFO sighting in Cyprus. And he said the following in 1971 to BBC Radio. He said, I used to be a member of the Royal Marines, and we were part of a group called 41 Commando Group that was stationed in Malta. We used to depart from Malta 2 or 3 times a year and go to Cyprus for what's called field exercises. Now, on this particular night, on May 31st, 1971, remember this is 3 years after the barracks incident in Cyprus.
Sure.
We were deployed in the field. About 8 o'clock-ish, a very bright light appeared behind a crest maybe 1,000 meters away. What it looked like initially was headlights of a car on full beam, situated behind the hill. Now, because this was a night move with no lights, I got on the radio, gave my call sign, and told them to turn their lights off. The lights just got stronger, so I transmitted again, negative lights. As I'm talking, this light came over the crest, about 1,000 meters away, and you go, it's not bloody headlights, it's a flare.
Wow.
There was about 20 of us at this place looking at this light when we suddenly realized that it isn't a flare. And you say, well, what else can it be? The brilliance wasn't burning enough to your burning eyes, but it was just awesome. The nearest I can tell is if you lowered the sun, this is what I mean by a burning ball of light. Front and back of it is...
That's a lot of light.
It's a lot of light, especially when it was lower in the sky. You had like a vortex of movement, as though you had a displacement of air. In other words, if a thing is moving, it would push air backward and forwards. Everybody on exercise, about 1,400 men saw this light. We then moved back to the barracks. When I got back to the base, I wrote a complete report of everything we'd seen that night. It covered about 5 pages. I posted it to my wife first and told her to keep the letter because I knew it was something different. And she ditched it.
That wasn't good.
No. The next morning we were all talking in the mess about the light. Later that morning the colonel sent for me and we were referring to the light in general discussion. He instructed that all subunits who'd seen it were requested to write a report on it, and anybody who had taken photos to hand them in as part of the research into this Mariner thing. Weeks later, it was confirmed that this was a UFO. You see what happened the first morning when the colonel asked me to get the reports, he didn't give me a full brief. I would be responsible for running the unit and he would normally be dead straight with me. Now, for some reason, he had a top-level meeting with his company commanders and would have discussed it with him, but he didn't tell me the full story. So that's interesting. So that
kept it kind of secret, didn't he?
So, yeah, it sounds like his superior already wasn't surprised by the sighting.
No, and he sounds like he kind of knew something already about it. And when he came to this with the story, he decided to have a secret meeting about it. So it's...
I mean, if you know something about it or you have involved in it somehow, having your own men write descriptions of what they saw, you can be pretty sure you know how much anybody else saw, because these men would be trained to actually acknowledge that kind of stuff,
right?
And would probably write a better description than an average civilian,
right?
So you're pretty safe then.
You're pretty safe. But this guy had a lot of witnesses. 1,400 men. That's a lot of people seeing this.
That's a whole lot.
That's a whole lot of people.
It's a ball of energy light that literally you can see it push the air backwards and forwards and it moves.
Right.
That's a strong, powerful ball.
So it's not just somebody who's, I mean, it's not just a couple of people saying, well, I saw it in the sky and they were in the woods one night and then a couple of people say, yeah, they did see it. I was there. Yeah. This was 1,400.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
A lot of service people too.
A lot of service people, yeah. And I imagine over these, I understand that he probably had a secret meeting because it's a military base. So they probably have to be very careful. Yeah. Especially if they're military, they want to make sure it's nothing.
Well, those top secret levels, you don't want to. The top level doesn't want to reveal too much about what they're working on to the lower levels.
Right, and they also want to make sure it's not something fishy or funny coming from somewhere else. They have to be secure because it's a military base, and that's what military does. They keep watch over protection. They're trying to protect people, but I mean, the good thing is at least he didn't ditch him and say, you're just making it up, and I mean, he took it seriously enough to go have a secret meeting.
It's funny is when I read that first article about the Dhekelia Barracks in 68,
yes,
I thought, I wonder if there's any other UFO sightings in Cyprus. And it's funny that this one was around a barracks as well 3 years later in Cyprus. So, I mean, we read about all the time about UFO sightings near army bases, military establishments, all the time.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's because we have top secret designs and aircraft, or that maybe UFOs, if they are visiting, that's what they're going to hone in on. They're going to look, how is their technology? I think they would be smart enough to figure out, let's go check out where their planes land. What do they have going?
Now, the humming noise, I'm wondering where did that come from?
Oh, from the alien story?
Yeah. Did it come from a ship outside?
That.
Because remember in some of the
It was
UFO...
a high-pitched noise, too.
A high-pitched noise, but remember also some of the cases that we've talked about before, that we've reviewed before, when there's been a scout ship landing, they heard a humming noise in the back, and that's the gravity, that's the sound of the ship when it's whirling, when it's above the ground. And I'm wondering if it was very close by, and it was just the noise coming into the atmosphere and into the barracks.
I don't know, because remember what it said when he fired the harpoon through the door into the hall, it stopped.
Oh yeah. Well, maybe it stopped because maybe they got spooked and they said, we're out of here.
Maybe he has the ability to just disappear into a ship and he's gone.
Yeah, and
he doesn't have to go back to it.
And excuse me for sounding silly, but I mean, if somebody's visiting somewhere and they're in a strange atmosphere, they probably have been trained to sense danger, and they have the ability to get out when they need to.
Oh, I would hope they would have. I
would hope so.
Why would you explore an alien world with people on it that are unpredictable if you didn't have a way to disappear?
Right. So whatever he was doing, they probably thought, okay, this doesn't sound good, we're out.
Would you want, let's say you were going to another planet.
Yeah.
And you were there to explore and learn and try and see how things are done. And if they said, Verna, we're going to put you down here, you're going to land, and you're going to look around and see what you could see, not knowing what you're up against, but we don't have a way for you to disappear quickly if something happens.
Yeah.
I don't think you would do that.
No, I wouldn't. And I don't think they would send anybody who just blindly, who wouldn't be able to protect themselves. Now let's talk about him sliding across the floor instead of walking. It makes me wonder about the way their body mass is made. If they're a different species, their body mass could be lighter than ours, where they're able to walk above.
That would be so weird because all you hear is the sliding across the floor. You didn't see it.
Now, are there certain animal species or species that can slide across the floor rather than walk? That's what I wonder, because I could have sworn there are, and maybe they're...
The only thing I can think of, honestly, in the ocean is like a jellyfish, where most of its impulse is on the top.
Yes. And
it glides because it pulls itself along. You know
could
what
be.
I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that this was a jellyfish alien. But the energy is towards the top of him.
Yeah.
And that maybe he's easily floated. Maybe it's his garments. Maybe it's his suit that was dragging.
Maybe.
He didn't describe his feet.
Or wait a minute. Or maybe it's the shoes he was wearing, and maybe. You know what I wonder?
He doesn't describe the shoes, the legs, or the arms.
No, but if they're meant for traveling in different atmospheres, perhaps not touching the ground is what's. Maybe they're wearing something that prevents them from touching the ground, and maybe because maybe they've mastered gravity, and maybe it's part of what they're wearing and part of what they're.
Or maybe his legs go back when he moves.
It could be.
So it's not on the floor, but
the way he's made,
garments are still dragging.
The way he's built, yeah.
That's such a weird idea, though. What a creepy idea for a movie, folks.
I know. and what about also the orange tinge on the skin? Now,
the skull.
Right, because I know that I've heard from scientists themselves that different planetary atmospheres can change the tinge of your skin.
Yeah.
Of course, just like I mentioned with Krishna, there are certain planetary atmosphere that can change your skin blue.
Yeah.
And you remember the children of Woolpit?
Yep.
They had green tinged skin, and then they lost it gradually as they lived here.
And I was reading more about that with skin pigmentation.
Right.
How there are certain vegetables and things that could turn your skin
and minerals and
blue or green if you ate it constantly.
Right.
And they're wondering, like the children of Woolpit, if that's the case, where they had whatever they ate and wherever they lived, it was abundant, and just the minerals or whatever was in the food
Well, there's even foods here now that can change your skin a different color. I've heard of people eating too much carotene and their skin gets orange.
See, I love carrots. I hope I don't turn orange.
Oh, so do I. But I mean, these are. I know. I wondered that too. But I have heard of people eating a lot of carrots, and their skin turns orange.
Oh yeah,
I've heard of it.
You really have to eat a lot of carrots.
But that's a lot of ass carrots. I mean,
That's
you
like
got to be Bugs Bunny to do that.
Seriously, every meal has to be a carrot.
Yeah, but I've heard of it happening, and then I don't know about blueberries turning you blue, but
Violet,
like
Violet,
like
Willy Wonka.
Yeah, like Willy Wonka, but I have heard that certain vegetables and fruits eaten in large quantities can turn your skin different, but that's only if you pig out on them. But I mean, living someplace where the ions in the air and the minerals.
Well, they say wisp of red hair and orange skin.
Orange skin.
So obviously whatever's in their diet or their atmosphere,
it's pigmenting. It's pigmenting it orange, red and orange. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Makes me wonder if redheads inherited some of the star seeds from that origin. It makes me wonder, you know, and not the orange skin, but the red hair.
I can imagine.
Can you imagine early man mating with somebody from that atmosphere, and they produce redheads?
I'm just thinking, I can imagine when people see a ghost they're freaked out, but imagine seeing that come up the stairs.
That would be very daunting. I mean, I've seen, this is crazy, I've seen people turn their skin a different color, but these people were not in their right minds. Linda and we used to go to this burrito place in the Mission, and there used to be a guy who would go in there, and he actually used to paint his face orange.
Really?
He did. He painted his face orange, and one
like
day,
a base?
Yeah, orange. And everybody called him the Orange Man. He would come in there, and he didn't look right. His hair was in dreadlocks, and he had kind of baggy clothes. And
maybe he had pigmentation where his skin was superiorly white, and he wanted to give it color.
No, because the next time he came in, he dyed his part of his hands purple.
Okay, scratch that theory. Maybe he comes from a different part of the galaxy.
I was going to say, but that was not because he's living in a planet where it turns your skin that way. That's just because he wasn't right. Wow, but that's the only time I've ever seen it, but everybody knew he wasn't right, you know. But if I were in a barracks or someplace and somebody comes up like that and they're sliding across the floor, yeah, I think I'd freak out. I don't know, what would you do?
I would slam the door shut.
Yeah.
I would, I don't know, I'd be afraid it would come through the door or open the door.
Would you even get a picture?
In 1968, no.
No, not in 1968, but I mean, if this were happening to you now, would you?
I bet I'd reach for my phone.
Yeah,
I would videotape
I thought
the whole thing.
That's what I was just thinking. If this was Tony Anderson, he'd get a picture.
I would grab that phone and turn on the video and record.
And then shut your door.
And then you'd see nothing because my phone can't record in the dark very well for video.
Oh, yeah, right.
Maybe I'd just take flash pictures. That'd be probably better.
Yeah.
And no one would believe you. Think about it. If you took pictures of this and you come in your barracks with your cell phone, but people would say, "Oh, that's just a dummy. Oh, it's a Halloween costume. It's fake." That's all they would sell you today. It's fake. That's the problem with our society now. Is cameras are so common that even if you did capture something real,
it's fake.
You would always, oh, that's just fake.
Well, I've seen that because I remember that. The Oddfellows had to bury that little girl who was buried, whose coffin was found in a house after being buried under the house at 150 years. Remember that?
Yep.
And remember, they finally revealed the picture. We weren't allowed to see the picture at first, but they finally revealed what she looked like.
Yeah. Under
the glass, she was preserved. Well, there was a couple paranormal groups going, "It's fake, it's fake, it's fake." And I actually had to post and say, "No, it's not fake. I was there. I'm an Oddfellow. We had to go to the funeral. It's not fake."
Yeah.
And they just insisted I didn't know what I was talking about. It was fake. And I'm just like, I'm not going to argue with you guys.
Well, they said it was in the Richmond district. There's a lot of fog. That literally, that casket was hermetically sealed the way it was designed.
Right. It was. And she was a pretty little girl,
in fact,
too.
I don't think they opened it. They put it in another coffin, correct?
Yeah, they didn't open it. They just put it in a newer coffin. But she was a pretty little thing.
But I think that's why the air hasn't gotten in there.
It hasn't gotten in there.
It's like Egyptian mummies.
So she didn't decay.
Yeah.
So, but of course, they said it was fake, and I explained it to them. No, it wasn't. I was there. I went to the funeral.
Yeah.
I'm an Odd Fellow. This is San Francisco history. This really happened. They blew me off. They didn't believe me. So. You're right. They don't. So right. It's something like that happening today. It takes a lot of convincing. But
did I ever tell you that with that girl's body that the people who lived there had paranormal experiences afterwards?
No, I didn't hear about that part.
Before they found her, she has 2 little girls. They both had nightmares about seeing a little girl.
They did.
And they would cry and wake up and say, "We saw the little girl. Oh, it's just a dream. You're having a dream." And then they experienced something in the house, and then they dug it up. They didn't tell that part.
That's crazy.
I found that in another article later on, an interview.
I didn't hear about that part.
I thought that was interesting.
Wow. So apparently she would.
The experience in the house didn't happen until after they dug it up. But the little girls had those dreams
before they dug it up. So that little soul was not at peace.
No.
Oh, wow. And it makes me wonder if they're having any more dreams or sightings now that she's been properly buried.
I don't know. She didn't think it felt malevolent or anything, so I don't know. But the little kids had nightmares anyway.
And kids don't lie. Kids are very honest about these things.
Exactly.
So
I thought that was interesting, though.
That is interesting. So, but I really hope that that if these people who witnessed this alien encounter, if they
Barracks.
This in the barracks,
or the big ball of energy later, 3 years later.
Yeah, I wonder if these people are still alive, if they actually
some of them must be.
Some of them must be. It wasn't. Well, that's true about the barracks, but I mean the guy who saw the with the dog who saw the guy sliding. I wonder if he's still alive.
I don't think so. I got the impression he wasn't.
Well, apparently I found an article where Jenny Randall's interviewed him.
Yeah, she interviewed him because she's a big ufologist, or was.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's more in one of her books. In fact, I might have to look out to see if I can find it. Because there might be a lot more information in her book about this case. I didn't even think about that because I used to read her books all the time in the 80s, ufology books.
Now these little islands, it doesn't surprise me that they've had some UFO encounters, because these little islands are kind of a little out of the way. They're not with a lot of huge populations around them. So,
but again, military bases.
Military bases.
The one in Britain that I went and visited that had the same thing was in the 80s. Again, these crafts are visiting bases. And I don't know necessarily whether they're visiting bases or whether they're being manufactured and kept there. These men are just not told, and they see it and they think it's a UFO. We just don't really know. In this case, with that 1,400 men and that big ball of energy, now a ball of energy that can move through space enough to where you can see the air move. In 1971, couldn't see us having the technology to create that when we're just sent men to the moon in a big iron rocket. So I don't think we would have had the technology to make that. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah. I was hearing that I heard that there's an ex-Army colonel named John Alexander. He seeks amnesty for military who witness UFOs.
Yeah, there's a lot of them after they retire. They're like, I have to tell you this before I die. And that's happening more and more because I think they're tired of having to keep it secret.
And not only that, they probably have a lot of, some of it may be traumatic for them and they have to talk about it. So he probably wants them to come out
But think about it now, the government-wise. You've kept this mockery going for so many decades that if you finally say, you know what, let's just tell the world, let's tell the public, what's the public going to think of you that you've been keeping this under wraps for so long? Oh yeah, it's all national security, we couldn't tell you. You couldn't tell us for 100 years?
We're seeing more and more of that. We're seeing more and more of that actually, where it was kept secret for a long time, and now it's being lots of stuff is being, not everything,
documents are being
documents
released.
are being released, but not everything, obviously. Of course, they can't do everything,
But the biggest secret of all, extraterrestrial life may exist somewhere else. To keep that from the public.
well, I've been wondering about that. And one of the reasons why I think they kept it for a long time is because the public reacts differently to these things now than they did years ago.
Well, you got the religious aspect, which is probably not as prominent now as it would have been years ago.
It might have, who knows, but the way people were superstitious about stuff or scared about stuff, it may have evoked panic in people. So now people are evolved, they're thinking differently, they're wanting to know more, and I think that's probably getting them to release and talk more, because it's not creating such a panic sensation as it would have years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe certain enlightened people or certain people who are curious about these things wouldn't have panicked, but think
Remember
about...
when the Pope, was it a few years ago, said, oh yeah, if aliens exist, they're part of God's creation. Do you remember when he came out with that a few years ago?
And that's
Everyone thought,
not,
"That
I
was
remember
weird."
that. It was weird, but it makes sense if you're a religious person and you believe in the existence of heaven, you believe in the existence of a higher being, why wouldn't that be part of it?
Mhm.
It doesn't it
But
makes
you gotta
sense.
wonder if it's laying the groundwork, little by little, like let the religious people get used to the idea, so that when it is finally revealed, it's not, oh my God, pandemonium.
Right, little by little. And
Yeah.
I've heard that the Vatican actually has a lot of UFO files about UFO sightings and actually encounters where they came to talk to them because they were a religious
Can you imagine what's in
organization.
the Vatican vaults? I would love to take a look at that.
Oh
stuff.
my God, I'd love to look at that. But remember, George Adamski had a meeting with the Pope. So it makes
Yeah.
me wonder what they talked about.
I'm sure that similar discussions about what
Something
George probably knew.
Well, we should ask Glenn Steckling next time. Glenn
Yeah.
Steckling's been on our show, folks. He's the head of the George Adamski Society. He's been on our show a few times.
The
foundation, yeah. So that's a good question to ask him.
It is.
Because I can't imagine it being that secret anymore, unless the Pope kept it secret. I don't know, but I think didn't he say George had to deliver a letter to the Pope, and that's and he had a meeting with him, and they did.
Yeah, I wonder what that discussion was about. I'm sure he must know at least part of it.
Right.
Yeah, we'll have to ask that.
So we'll
next
have to
time.
ask that next time. Yeah. So it's interesting how these
I just thought
these
this
stories
case was
are coming out.
I thought this case was interesting because it's not one that's
It's not
talked
well
about.
known. No.
And like I said, I could barely find anything about it. So I thought, let's talk about this case because some of these little cases are interesting and kind of need to be preserved somehow,
Yeah.
or they fade away.
Right. This definitely needs to be talked about, especially with the uniqueness of what they saw and then what came afterwards with that light everywhere.
Yeah.
That
The big
where all
ball
these
of
people,
light.
the big ball of light, where all these people witnessed it.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But again, Cyprus, so it makes you wonder if that's a little hot spot.
I was wondering about that, those little islands. I mean, if you're going to be exploring and you want to explore less populated areas and kind of be off these mass, that would be ideal. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, folks,
Okay.
that's this episode for this time around, and I guess until we see you next time.
We'll see you
on
next
Ecto
time.
Portal.
Ecto Portal.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later. Royalty-free, copyright-free music by Kevin MacLeod and Ross Bugden.